So new
I'm
recording is
recording.
running.
You have a recording? Yeah.
Yep.
So let's start with the client then. So here is the client source code. And what you would do, you have say that you have just checked out this code, then you would do yarn install in the Edumeet client repo. And you would then, when you have done that, either if you have changed anything from default in any places, you would go to config and create yourself a config with something in it. Change last n or whatever it may be.
Yeah, the most important stuff is port.
Everything
here,
should
right?
be okay by default, so it should just work by default. And so given that, what you need to do to test the client is just yarn start. Make sure you're on node 16 for the moment. That will fire up a window for you. And you can either go to it by localhost, but I usually go to it by my actual local address here because of security or certificates and stuff. So I go to my actual address, the second one in there. That brings you actually into the client, and yeah, this is that client running. But to have it actually able to connect to anything, you would need a room server as well. So don't ignore the wrong name on this folder. It's called Edumeet-room-server. So given that you have just checked out this repo, you would then again do yarn install, which is done, and then to run it, you would again need to, in that codebase, open a config.json file in the config folder, configure it roughly like this. Most important, configure a set of media nodes, however many of those you want, with their IP and port as an array here. So the example has the example here, so just follow that. So make a copy for yourself, config.json. When you have done that, you will then, do I have it here? You will start that in this way. You can omit this part if you don't want all the debug logs, but this will essentially debug everything with the debug prefix Edumeet room server, which makes it look like this. So this means that every log line that the room server emits that has this prefix will be emitted out here. So say that you just wanted warnings, you would then do warn : and star, which should be silent now because there are no warnings. Or if you wanted everything, you could just do star. That would then give you everything in relation to socket.io, as you can see, and everything. So yeah. So I usually run it like this to get all the room server messages. So the client is now able to join, but we still don't have a media node here. So we need to fire up the 3 media nodes we had configured. So let's do that. Edumeet media node. Again, you have just checked out the repo. You would then do a yarn install. It's already up to date for me, but wouldn't be for you. And then you fire it up in this type of way. Again, the same thing with the debug if you want to. You don't have to. And you need to provide the parameters for it. So in my case, then, as you remember from my config, my node was configured at 3001 and my IP. So let's fire up that node. I had 2 more. So that means I need another one. So that was the 302. And I had a third one, 303. The media nodes require no other config than these parameters when you start it, so that's fine. The client, theoretically, now should be able to join. I also usually always keep a console window open when I'm developing to see that everything is working as it should and there are no errors of any kind or warnings of any kind. And at that point, we can enter. And as you can see, there was a lot of logs flowing in the background. And here you can inspect all the various things that happens in the log. I would highly suggest you install the Redux extension if you haven't done already, and also the React development tools in your browser. If you on Edumeet.no or a running instance, for example, want to see the debug log still, go to your storage and local storage under the address of the site you're on. Make a new value the same way you see here. You have debug and then some value here. So we have debug star here. So for a random site, as in you can do it here on edumeet.no now, just add a new value, debug, and then star, and you will have all the debug logs in the console of whatever site you're on. Just a small tip. So what I typically do here, of course, is if I'm developing something that interfaces with the store in some way and dispatches an action, I will see, okay, I see here this action was dispatched here. So this was the action to update my devices on the me object in the store. I will then typically go into the state that was the state before the store was updated and look at how that was. So devices, okay, fine. The payload of that action was this payload, and the state after that action was fired can be seen here. So we can then look at what the state was and before and after. And also in the Redux plugin here, you can take any action and you can look at what the action was here. So these are all the actions you saw in the same log, just nicer. So set devices here, you can see the same one. Here you can look at the actual action, you can look at the state at that point, and you can diff and you can do lots of things. You can also here, if you want to test an action, for example, if I wanted to test the moderator actions, I needed to be a moderator to show the buttons, right? And I might not want to configure that on the server to make me a moderator. So I could actually, so as an example, you see the type here on set devices. So what I could do is I could make a type called whatever the, so let's go into the client then. And the source, store, slices, and permission slice. So I have the add role. So what I would do typically then is I would do a thing called permissions. That's the name of the slice. So we are on the permissions slice, as you can see here. So permissions, and the name is the name of the reducer. So add role in this case. Add role, and then you would have a payload with some value, so whatever action this pertains to. So add role is actually a fairly complicated one because the role is not trivial to. So let's take something else. Let's as an example, let's add a chat action here. As you can see here, this was added. Let's just take this. Here and type. Let's add a payload. Am I able to? No, I'm not. Well, shit, but you get the point. So I would then do peer ID and some, let's take my ID. Peer ID and display name and timestamp. let's just add a second to that, I suppose. And text. And this is a test. This should now pop up as a chat in my chat history here. So if I now dispatch that, there was an error. And what was the error? Payloads. Let's see, was I missing something?
1 comma behind.
Oh, I'm using commas there.
And the first
Display
line.
name, timestamp. I think that's correct, isn't it?
In the first line.
Oh, there's a missing comma there. Oh, okay. Dispatch, and then you see that appeared there. So there I manually dispatched an action to the state. So that's the way you can test that your actions are working as they should without having to add code for testing. And so just do it here instead. And that's it, I suppose. That's my workflow for working on either of these projects. So any questions to that?
Oh, I think it was right forward. Very good explanation.
Apart from that, you can look at the diagram I sent in the channel for the client for how it's built. So the Edumeet client here. So take a look at this, and you hopefully understand somewhat how it's built. Should be fairly representative of the application at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have roughly covered everything.
Yeah, there are of course a lot of specifics for certain things, but you would need to have some knowledge, I suppose, to be able to get into this.
Mm.